What's going on, guys? Balkan Architect here, and in today's video I'm going to be creating an announcement for this week's Advanced Balkan Architect course. And the topic of this course, or this for this week's Advanced Balkan Architect course. And the topic of this course, or this week's course, is a topic that you have been asking me for a very long time, and that's to do a beginner's tutorial or a beginner's course where I show you all of the tools and features that Revit has on offer for creating plumbing in Revit, and to explain all of that on a simple building project. So that's what I'm going to be showing you in this week's course. So to get plumbing fixtures, but they're all inside of this explain everything that I'm showing you. So here, as you can see, we have some plumbing fixtures, but they're all inside of this house. Now you can see the house is kind of grayed out, and if I select it, you're going to see that here it says Revit links. So that basically means that this project has been linked into Revit. So because when you're doing plumbing in Revit, you basically want to have one architecture project, and then you link it in another project that's used for plumbing. So you have those two separated. So both the architect and the plumbing engineer. And I show you two. So in this bathroom, I show you what to do when the architect leaves basically the bathroom empty. So it's up to the plumbing engineer to place all of the elements within the bathroom. And then in the other case is where the architect left all of the elements. So if I select it, as you can see, all of these elements highlight with the Revit link. So all of the plumbing fixtures have been left in by the architect, and then it's up to the plumbers only to install the connectors and then use those connectors to connect all of the pipes and solve all of the routing of all of the pipes. So that's what I show you in this case.
Here are a couple of tricks of the trade when you're doing groundwork. Now, propping your pipe out of the dirt will keep the dirt out of your glue. Seems simple, but it's just a pain in the butt, and doing something like this is very quick and easy. Now, when I put this Y on here, after it's all glued up and ready to go, you're going to see me put a Street 90 on. The Street 90 will be lined up on its hash marks, so then I can set my level on it properly to set the pitch on the Y. Seems pretty simple. It's a lot easier in this shallow trench, but if it were deeper, this is more important. You're not standing on your head trying to pitch a Y. This is just a simple trick to make it faster and easier. Hopefully this helps. Here are a couple of tricks of here are a couple
Plumbing Level 2 course. Chose this course because I like to work with hands, and I've done a little bit of plumbing in the past, a bit of a career change, so I thought I'd give it a go. Redundancy,
this week's question, which has to do with sanitary waste and drainage fittings and
over 43 million workers that are exposed to hazardous chemicals in the workplace. OSHA statistics show about 15% of all workplace injuries and fatalities relate to chemical exposure. Physical, health, fire, and other hazards can occur on a daily basis. With over 500,000 different chemicals throughout the world, OSHA has modified the Hazard Communication Standard, HCS, by adopting provisions of the Globally Harmonized System, GHS, to assist workers with the information they need to recognize and avoid hazardous chemicals. Upon completion of this training module, you will be able to state the purpose of the HazCom standard, recognize who is covered by the HazCom standard, state the 4 basic parts of the HazCom standard, state the purpose of the Globally Harmonized System, GHS, identify physical and health hazards of chemicals, recognize what should be included in the Written Hazard Communication Program, recognize the information contained in a Safety Data Sheet, SDS, and how it is used and maintained in the workplace, recognize the information contained on product labels and how it is used and maintained in the workplace, list the elements of the HazCom Standard Training Program. All employees have the right to know the potential hazards that chemicals in the work area pose. Before working with or using chemicals, each employee should understand the health and physical hazards of the materials. Proper handling and storage of chemicals can begin to reduce the risk of chemical incidents in the workplace. Some chemicals can cause different serious health effects, like cancer, nervous system damage, lung damage, liver damage, kidney damage, and reproductive system effects. OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is a government agency that was founded in 1970 to ensure safe and healthy working conditions for employees. The HazCom standard achieves its purpose by an integrated 4-pronged system. First, chemical manufacturers and importers must review available scientific evidence concerning the physical and health hazards of the chemicals they produce or import, and make an assessment if they are hazardous. Second, the employer must have a written hazard communication program in the workplace, and there must be someone responsible for keeping it up to date. Employees must familiarize themselves with the program and understand how it is implemented in the facility. This written HazCom program lists all of the hazardous materials at the worksite. It explains how the employer informs employees about new and existing hazards. It also notes the location of SDSs and who is responsible for updating them. Finally, it includes information about safe handling and recommended personal protective equipment, PPE. Third, for every chemical found to be hazardous, the chemical manufacturer or importer must develop comprehensive safety data sheets, SDS, and labels for containers, and send both with the chemicals to users. The employer must maintain a current hazardous chemical inventory form, which will be located with the SDS sheets. It is a best practice to have SDS sheets for all chemicals located and used in the facility. Fourth, all employers must provide information and training to employees about the hazardous chemicals in their workplace. Proper training will ensure that all employees will know how to read and use SDSs, will know what protection is required to work safely with the chemicals in the workplace, and will be able to determine what actions to take if an emergency occurs. What is GHS? GHS is an international approach to hazard communication, providing generally accepted criteria for classification of chemical hazards and a standardized approach to label elements and safety data sheets. This system provides classification criteria for health, physical, and environmental hazards of chemicals. It also includes standardized label elements that are assigned to these hazard classifications and categories and provide the appropriate signal words, pictograms, and hazard and precautionary statements to convey the hazards to users. GHS also provides a standardized 16-section safety data sheet format for all chemical products. Who is covered? Chemical producers, manufacturers, and importers will need to review the hazard information for all all their chemicals produced or imported, classify them using the new criteria, and update their labels and SDSs accordingly for distribution and end users. Employers will need to use these new labels and SDSs and provide updated training for all employees. Everyone that was covered previously by the OSHA HAZCOM standard will continue to be covered by this revised program. Hazardous materials. Many people characterize a hazardous chemical as one that could burn your skin, is flammable, could cause long-term health effects, cancer-causing, corrosive, toxic, or can damage specific body organs, which is true. However, OSHA also includes products that may cause minor irritation, like shampoos and detergents, which may cause temporary redness or itching of the skin, or watery eyes as hazardous. Chemical hazard classifications. Physical hazards, such as flammability or explosion, which can potentially cause serious accidents and injuries. Health hazards can affect a person's health either in the short term or in the long term. Environmental hazards can affect aquatic life in the short term or in the long term. GHS will not address environmental hazards, since they are regulated by other agencies. An essential part of a hazard communication program is labeling. This is a quick, easy way for employees to see the most important information about the product they are working with. The product's name, any hazard warnings, directions for use, first aid, and the manufacturer's name and address. All Betco brand labels also include helpful telephone numbers for questions and comments from users. Labeling requirements include the following. The GHS label format specifies for each hazard classification and for each category what signal word, pictogram, hazard statements, and precautionary statements should be used. This information must be located on the label. The actual label format or layout is not specified in the GHS program. Product identifier. Name or number used for a hazardous product on a label or in the SDS. Signal word will be used to emphasize hazards and indicate the relative level of severity of the hazard assigned to a GHS hazard classification and category. Only one signal word should be used on a label: danger, severe, or warning, less severe. Some lower-level hazard categories do not use signal words. Hazard statement. A specific statement assigned to a hazard classification and category that describes the nature of the hazards of a chemical, including the degree of hazard. Appropriate statements for each GHS hazard of the product are included on each label. There are two hazard classifications, physical and health hazards. Each of these classifications has specific categories. Pictograms are symbols plus other graphic elements that are intended to convey specific information about the hazards of a chemical. They are composed of a white background and red borders with the appropriate GHS symbol. Precautionary statement. A phrase that describes the recommended measures to be taken to minimize or prevent adverse effects resulting from exposure to a hazardous chemical. The precautionary statements have been linked to each GHS hazard statement and type of hazard. The four types of precautionary statements are prevention, response in cases of accidental spillage or exposure, storage, and disposal. Example, a precautionary statement of eye irritant will also state use protective eyewear. Supplemental information. Information on the container of a hazardous product that is not required or specified under the GHS. Supplemental information may be used to provide further details that does not contradict or cast doubt on the validity of the standardized hazard information. Example, the label could include the color, fragrance, or VOC level of the product. OSHA is maintaining the approach used in the previous HCS that allows employers to use workplace-specific labeling systems, such as secondary labeled spray bottles, as long as the employer provides the required GHS information. Product containers of chemicals that have been poured from one container to another also require the same specific labeling. The OSHA standard states that it is not necessary to label a container that you have poured from one container to another if the entire contents will be used or disposed of during a standard shift, such as a mop bucket or a spray bottle. Employers may choose to label workplace containers either with the same label that would be on shipped containers or with label alternatives that meet the requirements for the standard. Betco provides self-stick labels for secondary labeling purposes. Employers should provide the containers, self-stick labels, or provide information on appropriate labeling. In addition to these OSHA labeling requirements, an employer may choose to add additional information, such as the NFPA or HMIS ratings on container labels. Never use or handle an unlabeled container. If you find a container that is not labeled, notify your supervisor immediately. Pictograms are symbols plus other graphic elements that are intended to convey specific information about the hazards of the chemical. Pictograms will consist of a symbol on a white background framed within a red border, which represents a distinct hazard. The pictogram on the label is determined by the chemical hazard classification. These are the required pictograms for use on chemical labels. The Hazard Communication Standard, or HCS, requires chemical manufacturers, distributors, or importers to provide safety data sheets, or SDSs, formerly known as Material Safety Data Sheets, or MSDSs, to communicate the hazards of hazardous chemical products. SDSs must be provided with the first shipment and anytime the information changes. They must be obtained for all hazardous chemicals in the workplace before they are used. It is a best practice to have SDSs for all chemicals used at the facility. SDSs will have most of the information found on the label, plus more specific information about the chemical, organized into 16 mandatory sections, which are in line with the format established by the American National Standards Institute, ANSI. It will provide comprehensive information about the chemical product that allows employers and workers to obtain concise, relevant, and accurate information that can be put in perspective with regard to the hazards, uses, and risk management of the chemical product in the workplace. Sections 12 through 15 are not mandatory, and OSHA will not be policing the content of these sections because they are outside the scope of its jurisdiction. Examples: ecological information and disposal considerations governed by EPA, transport information, which is governed by DOT, and other regulatory agencies. SDS requirements. Employers can provide SDSs in additional languages, but English is required. SDSs must include information regarding the specific identity of the chemical and common names for it. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard requires SDSs for the chemicals used in the workplace to be readily accessible to employees. Acceptable methods: paper copies, online access, etc. It is the employee's responsibility to know exactly where SDSs are kept in the workplace and how to read them. Section 1. Identification includes product identifier, manufacturer or distributor name, address, phone number, emergency phone number, recommended uses, and restrictions for use. Section 2. Hazard identification identifies the hazards of the chemical presented on the SDS and the appropriate warning information associated with those hazards. Example: this would be the hazard statement, signal word, pictogram, and precautionary statement from the label. Section 3. Composition information includes chemical ingredients contained in the product with appropriate chemical names and chemical abstract service numbers, CAS, trade secret claims. This is only for the hazardous ingredients. Section 4. First aid measures includes important symptoms, effects, acute, delayed, immediate, and required treatment for the initial care given by untrained responders to a person that has been exposed to the chemical. Section 5. Firefighting measures that list suitable extinguishing techniques, equipment, and chemical hazards from a fire of this chemical. Example: what firefighters should wear while fighting the fire. Section 6. Accidental release measures that list emergency procedures, protective equipment, proper methods of containment and cleanup of spills to minimize exposure to people, properties, or the environment. Example: how to neutralize the chemical and proper disposal methods. Section 7. Lists precautions for safe handling and storage, including incompatibilities with other chemicals. Example: exhaust fans, temperature limits. Section 8. Exposure controls personal protection. List OSHA's permissible exposure limits, PELs, threshold limit values, TLVs, appropriate engineering
basting in. Looks really smart. I'll show you.
Morning people, it's Macaulay. Hope you're all...
Right, so on this job we're doing a refurb of the bathroom. The customer isn't wanting a full refurb, he's just mainly swapping the tiles on the wall. So he's called out to take the basin out, put a new basin in. We fit a granite top worktop and then put a countertop basin in. Looks really smart. I'll show you that shortly. We're also changing the bath staining. We are taking the old shower out and the old shower going back in. The radiator, the towel rail, sorry, is coming out and going back in. The toilet staying in place, that's not getting changed at all. So here I am just making the tap up, put the two tails in the bottom and the two fixing bars in. Here I'm just putting the bottom plate on, which is a nice little finish. Once that's done, we can sit it into place. Once it's in place, we have our two bolts and our plates for underneath and a washer for underneath, which we use our box spanner. A little tip for you here: if it's hard to reach, box spanner and double fit together, just to help with the extension bar. Some people don't know that, but yeah, bit of a trade secret. Use that to tighten it up, all nice and tight. And once that's done, your customer usually turns up with a cup of tea and just slurp of that. So it is the tap all in place, looking very smart. Yeah, once it's all tiled and everything's silicone, it'll look even better. So we're going to do a quick walkthrough of how to replace your bath taps. First of all, you need to isolate your water by either the isolation valves or your main stopcock to the property. Once that's done, we open our taps just to release any remaining pressure or water out of the tap. We can then grab our claw spanner or crow's foot to loosen the tap connector underneath the bath. We then grab our box spanner to take the back nut off. We do this on both sides and we should be able to lift the tap straight out of place. Once the tap's out of place, we'll grab a wet wipe and clean it down, as we don't want any gunk under the new tap. We'll then make our new tap up with the washers and cover plates, and we can sit that into place like so. Once that's in place, we get our back nut and washer and put them on by hand underneath and nip it up with the box spanner. Once it's happy there, nice and tight on both sides, we can grab our crow's foot to tighten up the tap flexes. But before that, we do check our washer just to make sure that it's still intact. Once happy that the tap connectors are both tight, we can reinstate the water supply by either the main stopcock or the isolation valve, whichever you have turned it off by. Once the water is back on, we'll check to see that we've got the hot and cold the right way around, as it is an easy mistake to make just by running the water. Happy days, another happy customer. Hope you enjoyed.
Right, just come out of that job, so first fix, second fix, bit of both. I've just come outside, I don't know if you can see. It's snowing! What's that all about? Ollie in Dewsbury, does it snow in April? Anyhow, on to the next one. I think we've got a banging tap and leaking tap to go start out in Eden, so we'll head over there now. See you over there.
So we got a call from a customer in regards to a leaking tap, which is also making a loud humming noise. So first of all, we needed to take the head off the tap. We do this by loosening the grub screw with a Allen key. Once that's off, we had to do this off camera due to having one hand and it needed a bit more of a persuasion. We got it out of place, isolated the water and loosened the locking nut from the top with the adjustable spanner. Once that was loosened, we could take it off by hand, and using a pair of grips we had to persuade the cartridge to pull out. It came apart in a few different pieces. Instantly I knew it was the reason for the fault on the tap. So I shot off to trusty Plum Call to go grab a new cartridge. Once you've got the new cartridge, it's a pretty simple job. It just slots into place. You just got to line it all up. We put the locking nut back into place, tighten that up with the adjustable spanner. At this point we could reinstate the cold supply, well, hot and cold supply I should say. Testing it out showed us that it wasn't leaking and there was no more humming noise. So again, another happy customer. Right, so we went to do a gas safety check on the boiler and the hob. On inspecting the hob, we found what our friends, the kitchen fitters, left us. It's a no, so get it swapped out and have copper all the way up to it. Let's crack on. Right, so it's Friday morning, first job of the day. I'm off over to the penthouse at around there. Done a bit of work there before in past videos. Got a phone call from the letting agents. Got tenants moving in on Monday. So we're going to run the shower in the ensuite, which we've done no working before, and there's no water coming out. So we think we've got a faulty shower pump. It's all gravity fed system, so brought a Gunfast pump with me. We'll get that swapped over. In regards to parking wars, if you're on Instagram, I think I've lost. What trick is this? Well, you gonna stay? Yeah, no? I've got keys this time. There we go. Red light. This must be the oldest turn on. Is there any power going to the pump? We have power to the pump. I've got a feeling it's not the pump, it's actually the shower valve. So, first of all, what I wanted to do was check whether it was the pump or the valve that was faulty. So, what I've done here is stripped it down. Unfortunately, it's not been the best fit, so we can't actually get the cartridge out. So what we've done is, I'm going to I've disconnected the pumping in the other room, and I've put the outlet from the shower going into a bucket. So when I turn this on, we should go around here. If water's coming through, which it is, we know that the valve is fine and it's not faulty, so it definitely is the pump. So we'll go get that swapped over. It's turned off. Flood the place. There we go. Right. We are fitting a Grundfos shower pump SSR2. So yeah, let's crack on. Get this fit. Just I'm going to switch that off. I'm going to get the pump out of the way. Just put in any water. So what we'll do is so we'll take the fuse out of there first. Excuse my bad camera skills. We'll get the fuse out of there, make it all safe, turn it off at the board, then we'll get the new pump fitted, so I'll just do that. Right, so with that out of the way, we've got our Grundfos pump here. So the side entry is our inlet and the top entry is our outlet. They come with these flexible hoses, and we have some washers here with filters in. So they just connect onto there. The one's got a bent flexi and the other is a straight, so your straight one on top, you've got a bent on the side. So they do this with one hand, so just push it on like that. And then go over there. Filter in. The other side, we'll give them a nip up with the grips, and then we have to, these are actually 22mm connectors, so we're going to have to put some reducers into there, reduce them down to 15mm, and we'll just connect onto our two fittings there. So yeah, let's go across into two 15mm reducers. Right, so we've got it all fit, we've got our reducers in here, excuse the soldering, yeah, messed up a bit, but never mind. I have to do the soldering outside, we're not allowed to do any soldering in this apartment. Apply for a hot works if we want to. So did the soldering outside and then just two compression fittings onto there. A bit neater than what you want before, I suppose. And then the electrics are all wired up in there. If you do want to see us how we do the electrics, drop us a comment below and we'll get a video made on that. So yeah, we're all ready to go. Water's back on. Oh, we didn't need to take water off. Well, we turned water off just in case, but water's back on. Not that we needed to turn it off because it is on the outlet. We've nipped these two fittings up here with a pair of grips. Yeah, electric's back on, so turn that back on. Let's have a look. Will it work? Will it not? Yay! That's
not. Just changing that. Might look into that a bit more. So yeah, all good for today. That should stop now. Yep, all done.